Hey everyone, welcome once again to another episode of GotFriends. With me today, two industry experts in the disposition area. First person is Mauricio. Welcome to our show.
Tony, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. So we're going to broadcast this on LinkedIn. And Mauricio, let's go through a little bit about how you got into this business of disposition and what does that mean overall?
Let me start by saying I started my IT career about 10 years ago with Sun Microsystems partner. And in the process, I was able to help companies, whether it's hardware services or software. About 6 years ago, an individual introduced me to the IT asset disposition industry. The industry itself, as I started doing research, has changed significantly. As we all know, the consumption of electronics has rise to incredible numbers due to mobile devices, and in the future we'll see more of this with IoT. But what that all means is that the problems are just going to get bigger, more regulated, and the key questions that we need to ask ourselves are: how is the data disposed of? How corporations can be environmentally compliant, and how do they mitigate risk from all the regulatory situations that are being placed by EPA and BAN.
Okay. So it's not really about just being environmentally conscious. There's regulations that require companies to do certain items.
Exactly, yes. But with EPA and BAN, what we've seen is that the regulation of the disposition of electronics, not just at an individual perspective to be, like you said, being good environmental stewards, but also corporations are being fined significantly due to illegal exports to China and other countries, where they go ahead and grab, they focus on grabbing the precious metals from them or anything of value, and then the rest just gets disposed of and landfills. And that is what we're trying to, as an organization, ERI, and other organizations trying to do, is educate to make sure that organizations are not only good environmental stewards, but they are also compliant and mitigate their risk to these fines that are being placed in the last 4 or 5 years, and will get tighter in the years to come.
Okay, so I'm going to let you introduce Aaron Blum. He's the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of ERI.
That is correct. So Aaron Blum is currently the Compliance and Operations Officer for ERI. He's been in the industry for many, many years. He's definitely one of the founders of our organization and is well-spoken and well-known in the electronic recycling and IT asset disposition industry.
So thank you for joining us today. Aaron, nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. Thank you.
So you're the subject matter expert in this area. So let's talk about corporate enterprise, for example. Why do corporate CIOs, for example, or chief privacy officers, why is this important to them?
Well, from a data destruction standpoint, there's a lot of federal laws that they must abide by when it comes to handling data, controlling data. But we're able to help them comply with those federal laws and regulations around how they handle data, not only internally at their business or at their homes, but where they're sending the material to be appropriately processed, whether it's wiped, shredded, or degassed.
Okay. Take us through a process. So, for example, if someone contacted your organization, how does that process work?
Yeah, so really there's kind of two ways the process could work. We have some clients that basically just throw all their electronics. They pay us a fee. Either we pick it up from their facility or they bring it to us. We'll go through, depending on the type of material, there might be a little bit of hand dismantling, manual labor, and then it will go through our shredding process where we'll generate a commodity.
Okay.
The other spectrum is with regards to kind of what we call ITAD services. Where we're inventorying items for a specific business. You're getting make, model, serial number, how many units, what type of units, and then they are requiring specific data destruction. So they might require us to come on site and do shredding. They might require us to come on site and do the degaussing, or they might require us at our own facilities, which we do. I want my drives wiped, and then I want them shredded, or I want them wiped, and then sometimes they want them back after they're wiped. So those are the two main realms of how material can come into our facility, and the client gets to pick what they want service-wise. We offer all those services, so they get to choose what services they want, and then based on those services, that's where the dollars come about of what they want in those services.
Right. So I heard that you guys have to maintain a really high certification.
In this industry, there's many certifications, and some of them are environmental, some of them are health and safety, some of them are quality, and then some of them come down to strictly asset disposition and destruction. So we're certified to 6 different certifications, all accredited by ANAB, and then we're certified through those by an accredited ANAB body. So basically what happens is that body comes into our facilities once a year, and depending on the size of our facility, we have 8 of them, they will spend anywhere from 3 to 6 days looking up every nook and cranny in our facilities, looking through all of our paperwork to verify not only what we say we're doing, but that we're actually meeting the standard with regards to those requirements. And the standards that we're certified to, you have e-stewards, which is e-waste and asset management related. So it covers from the time you pick up the material to how you handle the material to where that material ends up from a final destination piece. Then you have the R2 standard, which is very familiar to e-stewards. There's a couple little differences, but it's the same kind of walkthrough of the material of how you're handling the full life stream of it. Then you get into ISO 9001, which is our quality standard. So the quality with regards to the commodities we generate, the quality with regards to the asset management material we generate, and then the quality of our services. Then you have ISO 14001, that's an environmental standard. So that's basically how are you managing your potential environmental risk by how you operate, not only at your facilities, but also the carbon footprint to the downstream of where you're shipping the material to. Then you get into the health and safety management system, which is OSAS 18001. That basically is overseeing all your health and safety programs. So how are you protecting your employees from a health and safety aspect through training, through programs, through outside classes, and then also how are you improving in your facilities from an engineering standpoint? So engineering controls, those types of things to make it a safe work environment for these employees to work in. And then the final certification is called NAID, which is the National Association of Information Destruction. And that's strictly related around the security of your facilities and how you destroy data. It's based on the certifications we have.
Let's talk about how you came about doing this.
Yeah, so back in 2000, 2001, I was finishing up college, and I got an internship my last semester of college for a mom and pop computer resale company. And my responsibility was to go out to local businesses, and we would buy up material coming off refresh from banks, financial institutions, those types of things.
Okay.
And then we would bring it back, upgrade it, refurbish it, and resell it. Well, in 2001, California banned CRTs from landfills. So a lot of our clients we were dealing with asked us if we could start handling their CRTs. They couldn't throw them in their dumpsters anymore, and they needed an appropriate outlet to handle this type of material. So that came about the whole idea of, first off, CRT recycling. So we looked at the market just in Southern California and realized the amount of volume that potentially could be coming into the waste stream. So in 2002, we put together a business plan and raised an additional $2 million and opened our first CRT recycling business January 1st, 2003 down in Vista, California.
Wow.
And our sole focus was to bring in all the CRTs that were destined for landfills prior to regulations and tear them down, separate out the commodities, and have the glass appropriately recycled downstream. Well, what that turned into, just in regards to the state of California, is California started to look at all electronics, anything containing a circuit board. So in around 2005, 2006, California banned anything with a circuit board from landfills. So now you had printers, copiers, fax machines, all these different types of electronics that needed to be recycled. So what that did for our business is basically we went from about 90 to 95% of CRT recycling, and now we were a full-blown electronic recycling facility. And around this time, due to the legislation, there was many cities and counties in California that didn't have this money in their budget to pay for the proper recycling of this material. So Senator Scher, along with some other senators and congressmen here in the state of California, developed what we now call SB 20. And basically what it was set up as an electronic recycling fee at the time of purchase for us as a consumer. So anytime we go into a retailer or online to buy a new video display in the state of California, we get charged an additional $6 to $10 based on the size of that actual video display. In return, as a recycler, like Computer Recyclers of America, when we first got started, we would bring in the CRTs and video displays for free, and then we would bill the state of California for the proper recycling of that material. And what California required was show where you got the material from, so the date you got it, the name and address, whether it's a business or a consumer, and how many units you collected from that source. Then you had to show through paperwork and operations how you processed the material, meaning that it couldn't be reused in the stream again. And then you have to show where all the commodities go, so all the downstream plus receipts from those vendors, including the CRT glass. Well, as California evolved, the second state to ban CRTs from landfills was Massachusetts. So we made our one and only acquisition in 2007. We purchased a company in Gardner, Massachusetts, and now it has been relocated to Holliston, Massachusetts, which is about 45 minutes south of Boston. And the other markets that we got into around 2008 was the Washington market, the Texas and Colorado markets. And then Indiana was added on around the end of 08, beginning of 2009, as it happens to be the middle of the United States. You can get anywhere in the United States within 24 hours from Indianapolis, Indiana, so it's a fun fact. But it put us right in the middle, and from a trucking standpoint, you got a lot of trucking coming through there, so freight-wise, we were able to get material easily into that facility.
Right.
As we progressed through time, we went from a real heavy CRT business. Now we've moved into the flat screen business. So as CRT started to become less and less of the waste stream, and you're dealing with leaded glass, you're now dealing with the flat screens, which have a whole nother hazard you're handling. And for the most part, that's the mercury tubes that are contained inside of them. So even though electronics have changed, they still have a lot of the hazardous constituents, which make them illegal to send to a landfill. As we've evolved into these new ways of electronics, in the past, the electronics that you were getting in 20, 25, 30 years old. So there was really no resale value to this material because it was so old. The day and age we're in now, and us as consumers, we want the newest and best electronic out there on the market. Cell phones, for example, have an average lifespan of 9 months. A TV is anywhere from 3 to 5 years. What that has done is really thrived in the resale market and really expanded the size of that market. And when we look at recycling, the first part of recycling is let's try and reuse it first. If we can't reuse it, then we go to the recycling aspect. So over about the last 3 or 4 years, we've been able to really expand on the refurbish and resale market due to the newer electronics we're getting in, and there's still a marketplace to sell those. So we will bring that material in. The first thing we will do is validate whether that can be refurbished and resold as a whole unit, so a whole TV or a whole laptop. If it can't, then we do parts harvesting. So basically we will go through the unit and we will harvest out parts that are still working because there's a huge market just for the parts. If those two factors don't play out, whether it doesn't work, there's no market for the material, it now then goes through the recycling process where through hand dismantling, shredding technology, so on and so forth, we're able to generate commodities. And the high value commodities that we generate are precious metal bearing material, which is mostly circuit boards, so that's where your gold, your silver, and your palladium is. And then you have plastics, aluminum, steel, and copper. So those would be your major generators of material once it's recycled. For many, many years, the environment has been the #1 important factor that clients are trying to look for in a recycler that they choose to make sure it's handled environmentally safe, not at their own operations here in the United States, but when it further gets downstream. Well, in about the last 2 or 3 years, as we're all familiar with, data has become an important aspect to this industry. Everything we handle today from an electronic standpoint has some sort of data on it, or whether it's your smart TV, or you might have a Netflix account, your copier where you've copied 100 documents and they're saved on the copier. Those types of things need to be handled appropriately. So that's really driving that side of the business for us. And there's many ways to do asset disposition. There's wiping, which you can do a 3, a 5, or a 7-pass wipe on the drives. There's degaussing for your old hard drives that contain the magnetic disk. There's shredding. There's on-site data destruction where an actual shred truck will show up to your office, can handle all the shredding there. And now we've gone to a new form of drive called the SSD drive, where it can't be degaussed because it's not a magnetized drive, but requirements in regards to data have now come down to a shred anywhere from 2mm to 3mm size, which basically makes it inoperable, and the chances of someone trying to put that drive back together are pretty much slim to none. So now it's not only the environmental side, it's also data destruction. And depending on the market you're going into, one might be more important than the other. Financial institutions, healthcare, government, they're the data destruction. That's their number one importance. Cities, counties, the environmental piece is their number one priority. But either way, the other one is very, very closely tied. We're either right underneath it or right next to it. So as we see the market evolving more and more, you're going to be getting less volume from a weight perspective because the electronics are much smaller and weigh less today, but we're getting more and more units. And that ties back to the fact that us as consumers, we want the new and best product out there. But the scary part about it is the data that's contained on these electronics. And we've all seen in the papers what can happen if it gets breached, not only to you personally, but a large business. And I won't name names, but large businesses, it can literally take them out of business for data breaches.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. Now, we're going to post this video on LinkedIn. Would you mind if people message you? Because since you are a industry expert, I mean, you know probably more about this than most people, anyone I know, actually. Would that be okay?
Appreciate that. Thank you. I've been a lot of years in the business and, you know, a lot of traveling and learning.
Yeah, you could definitely give a lot of talks on this subject alone. I think that's why you guys are the dominant player in this market. So,
thank you.
All right, so Aaron, we're going to switch back to Mauricio, and he will help us wrap up this call. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, hey, thank you guys for your time today. And if you have any questions or anything down the line, don't hesitate to call or email me anytime.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Mauricio, thank you so much for bringing him on the call here with us today. He's such a subject matter expert. Now, from your perspective, can you give us a quick 30-second summary and wrap up about why asset disposition, also especially IT asset disposition, is important in our industry?
Absolutely. Well, the key question is that I'm seeing nowadays, and I mean the IT asset disposition world it's a very simple message, but it's extremely complex processes on the back end. Number one is data driven. So where's the data going? What's happening to the data? And then for these end of life equipment. And then also is what is the downstream processes that will have an impact to an organization. Those are the key things to consider, and making sure, number one, that the IT asset disposition company is well prepared to not only be certified with the right certifications, the right facility, such as a National Association Information Destruction certified facility, and also its processes and chain of custody. So that's all based on data, including the data destruction, and then also the environmental impact of it, which is how many hands does that equipment whether it is as a whole unit or as a part of its unit, goes downstream. If there's multiple vendors, there is a higher risk of somebody making a mistake. While if there is no vendor involved except from the such organizations to where it's the electronic recycler, IT asset disposition company straight to the smelter. Those are the key things to consider.
So long gone are the days where companies can dump equipment anywhere. Both compliance on the legislature side and environmental protection, and also data and privacy are the key concerns, right?
That is absolutely correct. And just to give you a quick example, not to mention any names, but some fines can get so exceeding to these enterprises that enterprise companies that we've seen data breach and environmental fees that can go as high as $28 million that has been recently been fined to an organization.
So thank you so much. For those of you joining us for the first time on GotFriends and these LinkedIn videos, hope you learned something and these information are able to positively impact your business success. And thank you so much, Mauricio, for being on our show today.
Our pleasure.